Hi everyone. Welcome to back to the Piper at the gates of Delirium. This is the first time I've done this, but I'm really excited to talk about a few things and go live on my channel. Um, I wanted to talk about I don't expect a lot of people to join here, so I'm really doing this for documentation purposes more so than anything, and for myself. But a lot of people have been asking me how I discovered music, and they're intrigued by my ability to discover music and to intake and digest music. And there's a lot of different phases, I think, that go into discovering an artist and delving into one's musical ability. And I don't boast or claim that I'm extremely musical. In high school and college, I dabbled and wrote a lot of songs, tried to record a few things, but it was really a lot of weird stuff that I did, a lot of psychedelic, folky stuff. I performed a little bit, but nothing that really um, you know, took precedent in the media world that we currently live in. Um, so I don't claim to be a musical typhoon, but there is an element of digesting music and understanding what a musician is that I think I understand, more than the average person. So um, I'd like to get started with my first stage. When I was in high school, well, actually, no, before high school, I apologize. Apologies about that. Um, let's say sixth grade, around this time, I was into things like ponies, horses, a lot of. I liked Lincoln Park. I was into like playgrounds, playing on the playground, going down slides, stuff like that. Um, and I, uh, my parents had season passes to this place called Sarah Shell, which is in the Sharon area, um, and there there was a show of people covering Beatles songs. And I don't remember if I ended up going somehow. I don't remember if they invited me and forced me to go, or if I wanted to go, or if I even thought anything about it. And this was, I think I was in seventh grade, maybe between sixth and seventh grade. And the music actually blew me away. Um, I remember they played songs like She Loves You and She Loves You and I Want to Hold Your Hand. And it was really being in the Sharon area at the time and listening to those songs really got me thinking. And I was like, I used to think that the Beatles were a band that only old people listen to. I thought they were like, boring, soft. I thought old people music, you couldn't really hear anything. But when they played those songs, I thought they were fun. I thought they were catchy little tunes. And the Sharon area really brought to life the uh, the music. So I went to the concert and I surprisingly enjoyed it. And I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, oh, okay, that was a good concert. I enjoyed it. Maybe the Beatles are good. So I go home and I ask my parents if they have any CDs. And this is before the internet. It looks like someone has a question here. Yes, it was. So yeah, the concert was in my neighborhood where I grew up. That's where I went to the concert. So I asked my parents if they had any Beatles CDs, and this was before streaming, before the internet was really a big thing. I mean, there was the internet, but it wasn't like controlling our lives like it is now. And they showed me the Beatles One album, which, if you go to Spotify, it's there right now. It's this red album, as you can see, crystal clear. Wow, you can't see it at all. Can you guys see that? There we go. Great. So I pulled up this CD and I started listening to it. And I remember listening to this song when I was like 13 years old. I was sitting on my bed, and I found a guitar that my dad had that had the top two strings, and I didn't know how to tune it. And right at this part, I would hit the top string, and let it ring out, and I would pretend to strum to this song, "Love, Love Me Do," and pretend I would have this fantasy that I was performing, and really starting to love their voices. Wow. When I'd hit the string, I'd be like, oh, I'm kind of contributing to the song. So eventually, I listened to pretty much every song on this album. Um, now I'll admit, when I discovered the Beatles, I started, doing research and looking into, okay, who's Paul McCartney? What does he look like? What are his voice? What's his voice like? Who's singing? Is it who's this John Lennon guy? Who's dead? Who's alive? Is John Lennon dead? Who's George Harrison? So I started, going to the internet and reading about these guys, um, understanding where the songs come from, and I was mostly into the early songs at this point. Songs like "She Loves You," "From Me to You," "I Want to Hold Your Hand," "I Feel Fine," just like the really easy poppy Beatles songs. And if you guys really like this video, don't feel free to like and subscribe and share it with your friends. Um, but yeah, this was a first step to me discovering music. Now, what I remember my best friend at the time, my high school best friend, he was in a trip and he was gone for like a month, and it was during the summer. And then he comes back, and I tell him, "Hey, I'm into the Beatles now," and he's like, "What? Like, you're into the Beatles?" And then I eventually get him into the Beatles, and then I find this friend in junior high who also loves the Beatles, and we would listen to this album over and over again. We would get tennis rackets and have our tennis rackets and pretend to strum the guitar and jam out to the Beatles songs. And eventually we would listen to all the songs, even the later Beatles songs. I remember we listened to Thanks Joe. I remember we listened to Hello Goodbye over and over again. And obviously at this point, I wasn't sure what I was getting into. It was kind of like the starting point to a lot more steps. Um, but what eventually happened is, after really listening to all of these songs, I remember I went to the library and I got more Beatles CDs because there was more music to get into. I couldn't even imagine getting into more than 25 songs. But it turns out that they had more albums. So I got albums like Hard Day's Night, Help, Rubber Soul, Beatles for Sale. And I was like getting into their albums and just every song. There wasn't really any song that I didn't like. Um, and I would get the albums and just listen to them nonstop. And it got to the point where I wouldn't just listen to jam out. I would discover and search for different songs, and the Beatles did get weird, kind of weird at the end with the White Album, Abbey Road, and Magical Mystery Tour, Sergeant Pepper's, and that was my first exposure to something that would be considered psychedelic or unique or weird. I mean, on the White Album, they have the song Revolution that is just noise, and the backwards guitar and I Feel Fine, and the album Revolver with backwards music. This really got me exposed to psychedelic music and what I would consider um, a unique art experience in the late 60s. And I think that this discovery of this band and these albums and these songs, like Strawberry Fields Forever, I Am the Walrus, um, backwards guitar on I Feel Fine, the feedback on I Feel Fine, I'm Only Sleeping, the backwards drum, Tomorrow Never Knows. Um, Getting exposed to this was my first exposure to what would eventually lead to discovering the band Pink Floyd. And I really think that this first step got me into the next step, which is what I'll talk about on my next video. But going to this concert, getting into this band, John, Paul, Ringo, and George, and getting into their albums really got me into this new world of 60s music that I didn't know existed. And that is the first phase of my musical discovery. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Feel free to like and subscribe. I'll be doing this more often now that I have a lot lighter load on my skin. And yeah, I'd love to help anyone digest music the way I can. So thanks for your time and look forward to next time.